Hi guys, I'm here with Richard Grannon, the Spartan life coach, and we're here for our second podcast here. So it's success4.com. Hello Richard, how you been?
Really good, mate. Thank you very much for having me on again.
How's the ear shingles?
The shingles of the ear have finally cleared up. I'm back in the gym, so I'm all happy. But it did knock me out for about a month. It's pretty heavy stuff, that.
What does ear shingles look like?
Oh my God. It looks like what I was originally misdiagnosed with. It looks like you've been punched in the ear. So I saw some nurses first, and they misdiagnosed it as a bacterial infection, but it looked like, they said, it looks like a rugby injury. And to me, it looked like, I've seen it in MMA. So a cauliflower ear, it just goes black. But instead of it just being a bruise, the black is scabs that are postulating. I hope everybody who's watching this is eating some noodles or something.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Because it's very similar to super noodles, basically, coming out of your lug hole.
So that was painful, but that cleared up quite quickly. But with when you get shingles in the ear, they call it Hunter-Ramsey syndrome. They start worrying about nerve damage and hearing loss and all this stuff. The worst bit of it was extreme vertigo and it's tiredness. I'd take like an hour walk to the shops or something, and then I'd have to sleep for 2 hours. Really weird. This is the sickest I've been in my adult life. A little slap round the head to show me that I am also mortal.
That's it. So, we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the news and how it gaslights you, and we're going to sort of relate it to a narcissistic relationship. But so you're back on your feet now. So just tell us quickly about what you've been on. You've got loads of new things going on at the moment.
The Spartan life coach YouTube channel is expanding. I'm doing some stuff with my social media, which is what I'm supposed to be doing. That's my job. I'm working on another project called strengthofmind.coach, where I'm releasing a series of podcasts that do get into things like moving into a little bit of politics, culture, history, where we're up to, trying to sort of share with people other ways of looking at the narrative of our history, alternative ways, and challenging the ways we normally think about who we are and how we got here, challenging some of the implicit injunctions of cultural conditioning. So that's the strengthofmind.coach. And at some point, probably this month, I'm going to start looking at going back to, this is what I used to do, is teaching kids, late teens, early 20s, about mental health issues and narcissistic abuse.
So you're kind of going full circle back to what you used to. Yeah.
I'm all about helping people to protect themselves. That's my buzz.
Well, that's the thing, is that I was talking about, there's a guy called Evan Carmichael that we'll be interviewing soon, and he talks about your one word, and your one word is protection. And I think that's why I'm sort of so connected with your work, if that's the right word, because that's the similar word to what I would like, safe protection. I went through a relationship with someone with borderline personality, and that really kicked in, wanting to protect people from that and learning that sort of thing. So I think that's why I sort of connected with your work so much. So and a part of that is understanding the messages that we get through each day and the things we subject ourselves to. So it's the media, obviously the music, films, books we read. So I was watching one of your videos before, and you said it's a crazy making world. I'm just reading this, that's why my eyes keep going over there. As a desire to control the narrative that is typical of emotional abuse and gaslighting. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So on a microcosmic level, in an interpersonal relationship where there is narcissistic abuse, there's always an agenda. And the abuser is seeking to benefit from the abusee. It might be financial, it might be sex, it might be fame, or it might be security that they're trying to get. And they're using love as the leverage. Similarly, on a macrocosmic level, you have mainstream media, and which is kind of functions as an arm of politics and government. Mainstream media's predominant function is to sell people things. Now, they could actually be selling you products, consumable items, or they're selling you ideas. But everything is a sales pitch. The narcissistically abusive relationship there's always an agenda. So we're being given a spin. We're being given a certain way of looking at things. The problem with this is, over a long enough timeline, and I read a stat the other day that said the most recent research indicated that most British people are watching 24 hours of television a week, is if you keep dipping your head in that bucket, you start to think that bucket is reality. That's just neural conditioning. That's how the brain learns. So our views of reality are becoming very, very distorted. The television and the internet used to be about reality, and now we have its opposite. We have reality being about television and the internet. So the televisual world, the mainstream media world, the social media world is developing its own gravity, and we're all getting sucked into it.
Yeah, very much so. And it is very much gaslight. And I explained to you before we started the podcast that whenever I watch the news, I do feel myself getting angry. And I'm not sure if it's angry because they're making you fearful. That seems to be the predominant emotion that they're trying to conjure up and gaslighting people. But also angry knowing that it's actually all rubbish. Actually a load of bollocks, to be honest.
When the bully is using fear to control, I think that it's been said before, the two primary emotions are love and fear. And so the idea there seems to be to completely defeat love and to completely defeat courage by pushing fear as much as possible. Fear has historically always been used as a means of control. And you don't use fear on a target as a narcissistic abuser unless you fear the target's power. So we were talking about whether I get angry with it. I don't find myself getting as angry with it now as I used to, as I said to you, because of the experiences I had taking acid as a kid. But also I think I feel like the hysteria is ramped up. So I suspect that they know they're losing control. We are reaching the end times, as Slavoj Žižek said. The way we live today is not going to be the way we're living in 10 short years. It can't be. It's not sustainable. It doesn't mean the end of the world is nigh, but what we've had for the last 10, 15 years, certainly since the year 2000, that's got to be done. And I think they know that. And so they're ramping up the fear. But because their efforts are becoming more and more desperate, people just stop listening. People that don't get as bothered about it. I mean, one of the things with human beings is we're very good at acclimatizing and adapting to new situations. So the last permutation of the big bad wolf, as in M. Night Shyamalan's very heavy-handed metaphorical film The Village, is ISIS. So we have all these really slickly produced videos with ISIS doing the worst things imaginable to other human beings, filming it and then leaking it. Funnily enough, they're doing exactly the same things as the Mexican cartels are doing. The specific methods of execution, the specific methods of punishment, and even the way these videos are set up. And it's like, oh, so they're learning from the same, in my crazy, paranoid, rejectable, contemptible conspiracy theorist mindset. They're being trained by the same people, as far as I'm concerned. It's a PR effort to generate fear, and I can see that they're trained. I can see that. I'm good at this. I can see the fucking Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, frantically pulling the levers and pushing the buttons in a panic. And they're going, this is the worst thing imaginable, people. This. And I'm looking at them going, this is fake. This is not.
It's quite clear. This
is not real. Yeah,
and I thought it was quite clear that it was fake. I don't understand how people can't see it's fake. And I think because I did film and TV production, I can see how things are put together, how they're cut together, how they're shot from different angles, how a different framing of a shot changes the psychology of the shot and where it's placed in the edit. And that, I think, has helped me a lot through the years of understanding this is rubbish. They're not even bothering anymore. If you watch some of the adverts, the voiceover for the advert isn't even in sync with the voice. Like the mouth.
For ISIS, is there?
No, I just mean adverts in general.
Oh, adverts.
Like just adverts in general. Generally speaking.
I assumed you were talking about ISIS. But
they've got an advert out now. They've got, come on, hop on board. We've got some few free spaces on the bus. Yeah. But they're quite clearly set up. If you can't find them and they've got an IP address for the internet to upload it, I'm sure you're not doing your job properly. If we can't find them, they've got an internet connection out in the in the middle of the woods somewhere up in the hills.
And the world doesn't work like that. We're not that efficient. We're not that all-knowing. If they wanted to do it, they would do it. So this is how. I don't talk about this stuff on my channel because it drives people absolutely fucking crazy. And I know why. People push back when you discuss 9/11, when you talk about the idea that Al-Qaeda means the database, because for good God-fearing people who are working 9 to 5 jobs and paying their taxes into the same system, their whole lives then become a lie, which is why you get this extremely strong pushback the other way when you bring these subjects up.
Yeah, you do. And yeah, they have to start looking at things in a different way. And I think that's kind of like the reaction that most people do when they have to look at their own behaviour. They start to push back and go, so say you are a narcissist, or you think you're with a narcissist, or you're with someone who's abusive. Actually, it turns out that they're not. They just didn't want to be with you. We had this discussion earlier. You have to look at your own part in it. And that isn't very pleasant for some people.
Well, the game that the narcissist plays with their target is when they do their strategy well, is they cause the target to lose their ability to perceive reality, and they cause the target to lose their ability to think critically. So when I'm in an argument with somebody and I say, why did we go to Afghanistan? And they say, because bin Laden. And I'll go, what bin Laden? What's that got to do with Afghanistan? I've had this argument with soldiers who served multiple tours in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And I'll say, why did you go to Afghanistan? Terrorism. But why Afghanistan? Why were you in what the fuck did that have to do with anything? Bin Laden was there. Says who? Did the FBI put bin Laden on their most wanted list for the Twin Towers job? No, they didn't. Why didn't they? According to the director of the FBI at the time, there is insufficient evidence linking bin Laden to 9/11. But the rest of the world walks around going, something brown people, something Muslim, something beard, something Big Bang explosion, something major conspiracy to kill everybody in America and in the UK. And I'm like, boys and girls, this is childish. This isn't even a good lie. This is a poor lie. So that's good narcissistic abuse. The narcissist win. That's straight out of the Narcissist Handbook. Infantilize people. Discourage critical thinking. The gaslighting that we receive in the mainstream media is not just, oh, the news is lying. Fuck, we all know that. It goes way beyond that. Charlie Brooker was the one who pointed this out to me and made me realize, you know, all this stuff where they're asking you for your opinions all the time? Even the news shows say, dial in now and tell us whether you think the fucking prime minister should wear red or pink lipstick.
Yeah.
What that's actually doing is it's encouraging people to opinionate, because opinionation releases serotonin in the brain and it makes you feel like you have an authority, like you're being heard, like you have something to say. Social media, it doesn't encourage critical debate. It doesn't encourage critical thinking. It encourages opinionation, which makes people more stupid. So whenever I'm debating with people, I'm like, can you stick to objective facts without shouting at me with your opinions? And can you do this without shouting? Can you do this without becoming emotional? The mainstream media, the mass culture that we live in, it's encouraging opinions, and it's encouraging it's saying your subjective opinion and feelings count, and objective, rational approach to the facts doesn't matter as much. That offends me very deeply. That's really dangerous. That's really dangerous shit.
Yeah, and when you watch it and you know that there's other facts involved, and it's kind of like, I don't understand how people don't understand that, or do they understand it and they don't want to look at it?
It's Zizek talks about it a lot. It's a Freudian concept. It's called the fetishist split. So I know very well, but I do not want to know, so I do not know. So we live in, and that's why people act so crazy, because they do know. They do know, but they don't want to know. I remember myself when it came to like the 9/11 thing particularly, and I'm going back, because I was trying to join the army at the time. And I was like, well, like, if that's all right, so what, it's not that it happened is awful. But if there was even just a rogue faction within the government that managed to create a stand down of the air defense system of the United States that normally would respond to a plane going off course inside of 15 minutes, which has been historically proven by other cases, where there were planes going offline for an hour and a half that they had no contact with, and there was zero planes were scrambled, no fighter jets were scrambled. And you go, okay, so even if a rogue element managed to pull that off, what does it mean? And then thereafter, like the whole house of cards just falls down. I'm like, I can't fucking join the army. And then it was like, my thing was officer training in the army, join the intelligence, and then because I didn't get into Oxford and Cambridge, I was going to try and get my way into MI5 through having served as an officer in military intelligence. It's really hard if you've not been in Oxford and Cambridge to get into MI5. And I was like, I can't pursue that path. I can't be a patsy. I can't be a shill. I can't be used like that. And that, the cost to me personally was huge. So I fought it. It was in my head for days. I was like, can't be true. Why not? Because we would never do that. And that is exactly what the brainwashed victim of narcissistic abuse will tell you when you're like, you see your husband is cheating. There he is. Like, look through the window right now. He is having sex with another woman. No, he's not. Look, he wouldn't do that. He's doing it right now. No, he wouldn't do it. So that's that next level gaslighting that I'm talking about, where your critical faculties have actually just shut down. They've atrophied. You're not using them anymore, and they just disappear.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned we then, or we would never do that. I've always found that term quite fascinating, because I've never seen myself. I couldn't understand as a country we. I'm like, I had nothing to do with this. I was on the toilet at the time. Like, where's we about it? As like they did it. That single person did it. And I think there's a lot of bunching people together from a behaviour point of view. So we're all responsible for each other's behaviour if we happen to have the same colour skin, we happen to have the same colour hair, or we live in the same sort of country, happen to be born on that bit of the world. I'm like, hang on a minute. Yeah. I didn't ask for any of that. Does that make sense? And I find that psychology quite strange.
Well, it's very frustrating. I mean, there's nothing worse and there's nothing more evil to anybody in the world than a middle-aged white male. We are the source of all evil in the world. And it's like, hang on, guys. You're not remembering your history properly. Gandhi, first of all, was trained in Britain to do what he did. He was a British lawyer, and he couldn't have done what he did without. He had African friends, he had English friends, he had white friends, brown friends, black friends. It wasn't like the guy didn't get independence back for India on his own. There were thousands of us, meaning pale-skinned people, pale faces, who were like, yeah, give them their fucking country back.
Yeah.
We should never have taken that. But it's not like, and this is true of any situation that you could name, but it is woefully naive for people to say, and for me to have said, America would never do that, Britain would never do that, the Allies would never do that. I didn't know my history very well at that point. But when it comes to the behavior of our nation historically, we totally would murder innocent people in order to acquire resources, to acquire security, and to further an empire across the globe. For sure we would.
So it goes back to the fostering fear, which in the end, which from a knock-on effect of that, requires behaviour that you wouldn't normally do to get that sense of safety back. So again, that's problem, reaction, solution. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, problem, reaction, solution, as it's described by, you were talking about David Icke before, and I read some of his books back in the day, and I was like, oh, Queen Elizabeth turns into a lizard and eats children. That's a bit wild, David. But some of the other things that he was talking about, I'm like, yeah, I can't even argue with that. That's clearly what's happening. So then I like to reverse engineer and analyze backwards. So I'm like, well, what's the solution that everybody is demanding? Whatever the solution that everybody is demanding, if we work backwards, that's probably what the people who would want the masses to demand, that's probably what they were looking for. So at the moment where we start demanding an end to mass immigration, where we start demanding that all Muslims are rounded up, put on buses and shoved in concentration camps, the moment where we demand that we all get microchipped because for our national security or for our safety, that's the point where I'm like, well, that's exactly what they wanted to begin with. Whatever people are demanding en masse, that's probably what they wanted to begin with.
That's the thing, is you don't have to force anyone to do it if you can convince them it's a good idea for their own safety.
And usually, historically, massive amounts of violence and the creation of a boogeyman. I mean, with ISIS, it's literally guys dressed as ninjas soaring through the necks of aid workers and charity workers, raping women, seizing women, throwing gays off towers, burning pilots alive. But I think on that one, they overplayed their hand. They're not perfect. They fuck up. as all narcissists do. Every narcissist and psychopath always overestimates their own intelligence and the stupidity of the people they're doing it to. And this has happened before. The Stop Coney campaign. My channel came into recognition not for narcissistic abuse directly, but because of a rant I did talking about the Stop Coney campaign. Do you remember that?
I don't know what that is, no.
Thank God that you don't. I'll show you the video after this. It's basically what we would now call social justice warriors created this video that went viral that was saying that the number one problem in Uganda today is a war criminal called Joseph Kony. He's recruiting boy soldiers. He's doing this. He's doing that. It's a genocide. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
What the world need? We've got to do something. We must do something. Let's send the troops in.
I remember
the name.
By
America. Do you remember the name Kony?
Yeah, I remember the name.
And people saw through it because it was clearly a psyop. And others, many people online just shot it down and were like, "This is clearly a fucking psyop." And I ended up becoming friends with journalists in Uganda over the video that I did because they were like, "Uganda, Kony's disappeared. None of us have seen him in 5 years. Where were you, 5 years ago when he was killing people? The West didn't give a fuck about us then. Why do you care now?" And it was like, "Well, what about child soldiers?" They were like, "Forget about child soldiers. We got this disease going round. We don't know the source of it. It was called, I've never heard of it since. What was happening is children were coming down with a disease where they would uncontrollably shake. And they were like, this is our problem. We don't have clean water. Children are dying of mysterious diseases. Kony, corrupt politicians. Kony, nobody gives a fuck about Kony. So we've seen this before. And I predicted for years, again, because I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist, they can't leave. Nigeria has one of the last large remaining huge oil reserves in the world, and that oil reserve crosses over into the Congo. And I was like, America has to invade Africa. They will invade Africa. All my mates who are like, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. I'd be like, you wait, within the next 5 years, America's taken Africa. Well, 2 months ago, we hear 4 soldiers are killed in Africa. And I'm like, hang on a second. Why are there soldiers? Why are there American soldiers in Africa anyway? Don't tell us after the fact. Oh, well, 4 American soldiers were killed today in Africa. Yeah, that's a good story. Can we find out how many soldiers are there and why? And then it transpires there's, I think, 400 to 500 ground soldiers just hanging out in Africa.
With Lenny Henry, probably.
Got to take him out, man. He's a major threat. So yeah, it's problem reaction solution. Whatever. If I need to invade Africa, I create a boogeyman in Africa and say, listen, he's killing the children right now. This guy is, wow, we got to get him. And the people go, let's get over there and sort that guy out. And then before you know it, we're setting up mines and we're drilling. But
it's quite these ways of manipulating, and like a narcissist, they are they're the same thing over and over again. So how comes people aren't wise to this on the mass scale? I think it's quite clear and quite obvious. I don't understand how they're not seeing what's happening. I mean, is it because we've looked into it, or
they are wise to it on a mass scale? I think the delusion that they have fostered, that the narcissistic psychopathic overlords have fostered, is that nobody cares. And I discussed this with my cousin. He's about age 30 the other day, and he said, well, for the Iraq Part 2, when we went in after 2001 into Iraq on the idea of the weapons of mass destruction, nobody believed in it, but nobody protested. I said, excuse me, Will. I actually brings it up on the podcast. 1 million British people went to the streets in London to protest that. And he was like, I didn't know. And I'm like, well, you wouldn't know. If nobody wants you to know, then you're not going to. Where's the film about that? Where's the film about the 1 million people protesting? It's unseen. It's unheard of. Brits are politically pretty apathetic generally, especially at that time, back in 2001, 2002. They're out there on the streets. 1 million people. It's so there is a mass awareness of it. The problem with mass awareness of stuff, and I can't remember the guy's name. There was his father was involved with the CIA acid experiments and ended up getting chucked out of a window. And his son wrote a story about the CIA acid experiments, exposing what they'd done, this mind control thing they were trying to do with acid, where they were giving unwilling participants, spiking them with acid and saying what would happen to them. And he said, this is the thing that everybody knows about. He says, everybody knows the CIA did acid experiments back in the 60s. And he said, that's the problem, because we have a fake cynicism. We're like, oh, we know that. But it kind of excuses us from actually responding to it authentically and going like, well, hang on a second. Like, the people who are supposed to be protecting the country from foreign invaders are taking mentally ill people and giving them psychedelic drugs and driving them to suicide. But everybody's like, oh, we know that. Don't talk. Yeah, so what? That's what it's a fake cynicism. And I think it's part of the psychological defense mechanism that sets up the fetishist split. So you go, yeah, well, of course I know my husband cheats. Yeah, my wife cheats on me a little bit. We all know that. We know, you know what she's like. It's like, what does that mean? It's part of the self-defense mechanism construction that forms the fetishist split that allows the abuse to continue without people protesting properly.
It's bizarre, isn't it, what you'll do to convince yourself or just ignore a situation or ignore a problem.
If the cost is too high of not ignoring it, people will continue to ignore it. So do you want to sit on the couch tonight and watch Strictly Come Dancing and X Factor, sip a few beers, chill with your homies, maybe play some video games? Do you want your internet access? Do you want your high-speed access to porn? You want that? Shut the fuck up. Sit there and vegetate like a good little tax-paying slave. Shut your fucking mouth. And what's the other option? Like, who are you going to join? Who are you going to protest to? Who do you attack? What, you make some, like, we could make some YouTube videos. We could do some podcasts. Doesn't make any difference. No. It's fun to talk about. It's interesting to talk about. People will watch it and they'll go, yeah, man, right on. And then
that's
nothing.
No,
nothing. It stops there. And in a way, I know that this also feeds into people's fake cynicism, because they'll go, oh, I'm woke. I watched this video and I got the references and I understood, man. And then I'm going to write comments and I'm going to be like, hey, you guys need to research. Fuck that. And fuck any of you who are thinking of doing that. Shut up. It doesn't make any difference. No. Doesn't matter. None of it makes any difference. The only time it's going to make a difference is when people are actually at where you have the psychological tipping point. We as biological entities, as mammals, we function on a very simple system: pain versus pleasure. So when there is more pain to not protesting, that's when we'll actually be motivated. We might be 3 years away from that. We might be 30 years away from that. We might never do it. But real protest means you're going to have to switch off your TV. You're going to have to stop buying McDonald's. You're going to have to, we're going to have to do some things that would actually damage the system that I'm not going to say here because I don't want to have an accident crossing the road.
So it's non-compliance. It's just not going away with it.
I would say if people really wanted to do a mass protest, I remember watching that film V for Vendetta, and I'm like, putting on masks and hanging outside the Houses of Parliament isn't going to do it. The only thing these people care about is money. We just all go on a buying fast. Just don't buy anything for 48 hours. Everybody, just stop. Everybody in Britain, just stop. We'll set a date from 10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock the next morning. Don't buy anything. It sounds like nothing, but you will fuck them up. You'll fuck them up. And if you do it again, and it's 2 days, 3 days. So we all stock up, we buy stuff, and then 3 days, 4 days, you just stop buying. And you just go, look, people of the government, we're fucking sick of your shit. Stop, or we stop. You stop, or we stop. We don't want to live like this anymore. But it's really hard because I don't think people realize how deep the hooks in are and how deeply addicted they are to television, how deeply addicted we all are to convenience, how deeply addicted we all are to our smartphones. So it's a tough one. I wouldn't want to lead such a rebellion. I don't feel the motivation. I'm pretty misanthropic. So I'm like, well, I'm not that bothered. At the point where they start rounding people up, I'll probably do something. Maybe. Or I'll just play Call of Duty Zombies and forget about it.
Don't worry about in Wales, across the pond.
I'll just hang out in Wales and be like, they're not knocking on my door. Sorry, folks. Sorry about that. I do worry. And the worry's been there for years. When I was running Street Fight Secrets, I was training guys. The major there's a place in the UK, I can't remember where it is, where they do a lot of the riot police training, and I know that they were gearing up for major riots, and they were getting ready for major civil unrest that they could see years out was coming. And the only thing we've had so far is the London one a few years ago, the London riots. But I don't think that's what they were gearing up for. I think that other things have happened that they thought people would be up in arms over, that people just went, yeah, fuck it. They're just not bothered. Just not fighting back. But, you know, it's the same in America. They said, you speak to people who worked in the security industry in America, there's been a gearing up for trouble for a long time.
I think they kind of underestimated how bored of it everybody is starting to get.
There's an apathy, and there's, you know, as their tactics become more preposterous and as the problems become more complex, yeah, people just kind of tune it out. I mean, what are we going to do? I'll go to my local pub right now. I'll interview 5 people. I'll say, who's ISIS? What does ISIS stand for? Where did they come from? What's their purpose? What's their mission? Why did we go to Afghanistan? Do you know the difference between Shia Islam and Sunni Islam? No, they don't. And why would they? I mean, they're not politics graduates. They're not like the. Why would the average man in the street know that? Well, if we had in the media maybe some things that educated people and said, hey, there's a war on in Islam amongst Muslims. ISIS is not for killing white people like me and you. ISIS is for killing Muslims. Who have they killed most of? Muslims, like dramatically, majorly more Muslims than everybody else. Sunni and Shia Islam are in a full-blown religious war right now, and the countries that represent those two different sects are actively battling each other. Is that on the news? Nope. Have you seen any documentaries about it? Nope. Maybe if you watch Russia Today, you will have done. You seen any films about it? Nope. You know, it's like, but people know, they know, and yet they do not know at the same time. So it's like this weird open secret. But has there ever been another time in history where we've been at war and we send our boys and girls away to war and they come back with missing arms, legs and eyes and nobody knows why? I don't think so. I very much doubt there's ever been a time in history where we've been in a 17-year-long war and most of the nation has no idea why we're doing it.
And do you think it comes down to that one thing that everybody seems to have, and they ignore it a lot of times, common sense? Everybody has the common sense that there's an elephant in the room, whether you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't want to be in there with you, you're having a conversation with someone who doesn't want to talk to you, you're doing something and the other person knows you don't want to be doing it. We all sense this.
Yeah.
We all do, I believe, every single person. Some more than others, but I think every single person has that's a common sense. It seems to be that that's being ignored more and more.
That's probably another element of mainstream media training. So your common sense is directly linked to your intuition. Your common sense, your intuition, in order to function properly, you need to be emotionally literate. People are being trained out of emotional literacy. You know, your opinions, your subjective responses, the lack of rational thinking, that goes hand in hand with the subduing of natural, authentic emotions. It's quite easy to train authentic emotions out of people. You can encourage them to believe that any display of emotion is taboo, that displays of emotion are weakness. God knows grieving and sadness are such a taboo in our culture that people who grieve and get sad are diagnosed with a mental health problem, which is amazing to me, that they get drugs for. Those drugs sometimes are extremely dangerous and can kill you. Why? Because the person is sad. We're so terrified of our emotions that if you show up to a psychiatrist and go, I'm really sad, they'll go, you've got clinical depression, take these drugs until you don't feel that way anymore. So, yeah, that will knock out, that kills intuition, that kills our natural animal instinct, and in turn that will destroy common sense. People feel it. Dana Morningstar is a woman who runs a YouTube channel on narcissistic abuse. She says the red flags of narcissistic abuse are not seen, they are felt. Everybody's feeling it, but you just got to push those feelings down, homie. Keep watching Dancing with the Stars. You'll feel better.
I don't know, it just makes me angry. But okay, I heard a quote earlier, and it says basically spin, news spin. So they say we're spinning the truth. Literally spin, what it used to mean, it's bullshit and it's lying. But now they call it spin, and it's a PR spin, and it's deemed a good thing to lie. And it's, look how well I've spun that. And to me, that's quite I don't know. It's just quite sad, really, that lying has become an asset.
It's an element of the times that we live in where it's described. I think it was I'm not sure. I think he was a political philosopher. I think he's Russian that described the phenomena as hypernormalization. So whatever you slowly cook people into, they just kind of get used to it. So we live in a world. You and I have grown up since our 20s in a world where we know that the enemies of our nation get tortured. Now, in the 80s and 90s, you couldn't do that. Well, you could do it, but you couldn't have the general public knowing about it. We even know how they do it. We've been shown on TV shows how they do it. Our nation systematically tortures motherfuckers. Wow. That's, that. So that's part of the new normal. The new normal is, everybody lies, man. Everybody, you watch like dramas on TV, if you watch game shows, if you watch reality TV, everybody cheats, man. Don't be such a stiff, man. Everybody lies, man. Everybody steals, man. I'm like, what is this psychopathic, criminal brainwashing that you're putting people through? No, everybody doesn't cheat and everybody doesn't lie and everybody doesn't steal. And by the way, doing those things is morally wrong. Morally wrong, you fucking stiff. You stag. What are you talking about? I don't know, some ancient idea. I must be some weird philosopher on the sidelines of life because some things are morally righteous and some things are morally wrong. If you can slowly dip people into this soup over and over again whilst making them laugh and entertaining them, you'll brainwash them into it. Yeah. I'm sure cheating has gone through the roof because monkey see, monkey do. Sex in the City. Just have as many boyfriends, as many girlfriends as you want. Fuck as many people as you can. Great. Fantastic. We'll just sit there and take that on board and go, oh, that's normal. That's the way people live. That's the way people live their lives. And then we're all sat around going, oh, people are so narcissistic. My boyfriend cheated on me. My ex-girlfriend cheated on me. Did they watch that thing called the television? Yeah, that may have something to do with it. It's the new normal. It's the hyper-normalization and the new normal. There's a good line in the last episode of Game of Thrones from Jon Snow where they say to him, dude, you could have brought us a very powerful ally in a war if you would just lie one time, just lie once. And he says, well, if we all submit to that, all you're going to have is a world in which the best liars win. He said, I can't, that's why I couldn't do it. It's a good line. And it's a very pointed, thing that the author has written. It's clearly about the times that we live in, where it is a case of the best liar wins.
It is. That's quite clear. It's been like that for a long time. I'd assume hundreds of years. And we were talking earlier about a glass ceiling in wherever you want to go in any industry. And I still believe this to the day, is that not just in the media industry, any industry, if you're not willing to play the game, lie, and I don't mean talking about your little lies of I didn't leave the printer on, I didn't, do you know what I mean, I didn't drink the last coffee. I'm talking about your malignant, manipulative lies that are going to have a knock-on effect to someone, and a situation, and you're not trying to control the situation. I don't believe, in my heart of hearts, if you're not willing to do that, you are under a glass ceiling, and you will only go so far in that industry, even in the alternative media. I think I genuinely believe that. I think if you're not willing to play the game, then you are at a level.
I think that's true. I would go a step further with that and say this whole thing that's coming out with Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and all that in Hollywood, these men are abhorrent. What they do is abhorrent. But why is every celebrity and every consumer of that industry pretending that we don't know that's exactly what it's built on?
I talked to someone recently, and I said about that. That's why a lot of them die early of drug overdoses, of drinking. I'm sure there's some few dodgy ones in there, but I think because having to live in the situation of manipulation and knowing what they've had to do to get where they are, it must be really hard to sleep at night.
Well, you said something about Britney before. Say that thing about Britney again. I'll give you an answer to it.
I said, well, Britney Spears, when she first started out, she was all a bit sexualised, but it was pop music, and it was probably over the top. She was older than she seemed, but they were blatantly trying to make her seem younger than she was, which is another whole situation. But also, as she got 2 or 3 years into her career, they really vamped up the darkness, and have done the same with Rihanna. They've done the same with Beyonce, really ramping up this dark, sadistic nature to their music and to their videos. And it's not even sexualized. I'm not talking about a bit like down the seaside, Brighton seaside, always shows your boobs, love type thing. I'm talking about this really dark weirdness, like
I'm a slave for you.
I'm a slave, and you're thinking, oh, well, are you really?
And this is directed at 14-year-olds.
I know, and it's
Mummy,
disturbing.
what's a slave?
Yeah, Britney's a slave. I want to be a slave too. And it's disturbing to see the darkness that's getting into the music, but it's always 2 or 3 years down the line into these careers.
I think if you look at Britney as an example, and you speak to anybody who's familiar with abuse, sexual abuse, how it manifests in PTSD, how it manifests in CPTSD and personality disorders, people who are the victims of that kind of sexual abuse in childhood develop histrionic personality disorder. It's a kind of narcissism that's quite sexually focused and very focused around my significance of me as a sexual object. Britney came up through the Disney Channel.
Yeah.
She was a little girl when she started in that industry, just like Justin Timberlake. Mm-hmm. Those people must have some stories to tell.
We watched last night, I watched a TV program, it was Big Fat Quiz of the Year, and had a little boy on there dancing straight away. He was 4 years old. It was Bruno Mars. He's been a famous kid since he was 4. Didn't turn up at 21, but carry on. So
why else would it look the way it looks? Don't forward engineer from the story they give you. Reverse engineer from the behaviors that you're seeing and the actions people are taking, and you'll see it's very, very clearly that. But yeah, in the case of Britney, when you were talking about it before we started recording, I was like, it's classic for PTSD. The cycles that she went through, the eating disorders that she showed, shaving the head, and then recovering, going through some therapy and recovering again. It's classic for somebody who's been the victim of long-term abuse that they couldn't escape from. The problem with that kind of abuse when it's in childhood, when you sexually abuse children, what can happen is they become hypersexualized. So that whole libidinous energy is hyperactivated. So very frequently, instead of becoming sexual anorexics and being like, oh, sex was the source of abuse, never bring sex my way again as a sexual anorexic would, they more frequently go the other way and become histrionic and become obsessed with controlling that power of the attachment that comes through libidinous sexual energy. And I think she's classic. She's a classic example of that.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time.
A little bit. I know. I expect it to be hard for people. Not everybody's a psychologist. Like, it's like I can't flinch from anything. It's just not allowed. Like if a client sees me flinch, if they tell me a story and I go, ugh, that's frightening, or I've lost rapport.
Yeah.
So I don't expect people to not be able to flinch from anything, but it's one of these issues, anything that is to do with sexual assault, rape, or pedophilia, because people are unconsciously withdrawing from the horror of it, the way we process it tends to get a little bit messed up. It's a lot less practical than we would be about a burglary or a murder. People get a bit like, ugh, and they start using words that protect themselves and protect the public from what's happened. I found this a lot in the probation service. The probation officers would use words to protect themselves from the reality of what the criminals we were dealing with had done. And I would always be like, can't you just say what it really is rather than, you know what I mean? It's it's an example of the fetishist split.
Well, it's been a fantastic. I've taken up a lot of your time. It's fantastic to look into these things and do something different. To see the way the world could be. I mean, it's really. I wanted to do a podcast at the very end and say, just be careful what you ingest, because that becomes your state of mind, the way you see the world around you. So if you surround yourself with, do you know what? I've had this with conspiracy theories. I've had to stop looking into them because it was getting me depressed.
Oh, yeah, no, I remember Bill Burr talking about it, the stand-up comedian. He got deep into it, and he just said he came to the same conclusion that I did and a lot of people did. It's like, well, I've seen enough to know that this stuff is true, but I'm not going to watch Alex Jones every day, because you do go crazy. You will go crazy. You'll start thinking there's a video camera in the TV. You'll start imagining that MI5 has picked out the keywords from this conversation, is tracking us now.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. So I would say to everybody watching this, don't stick your head in conspiracy theory land. It's not good for you. I am very optimistic and very hopeful about the future for humanity. I think probably what is being applied to us worked for a long time, but it can't really work anymore. And we are reaching, as Zizek says, the end times. Those old systems of control are going to crumble. They're either going to crumble in 3 years or 30 or 100 years, but it has to crumble. I mean, Brexit, we didn't even touch on that, but in terms of controlling narratives and brainwashing, that will never happen again. They can't pull that same trick twice. Trump, Brexit is England's Trump inauguration. The Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump thing, where you were like, well, that'll never happen. We were the same way. We were like, well, we're never going to leave the EU, so why even fucking argue about it? Why vote? Donald Trump's never going to be president, so why even? So we both had the same shocking thing go down, but I don't think it can happen again. And as awful as these things are, it motivates people to sort of go, okay, we need to be more engaged. We need to actually focus on what the real issues are and gather the facts rather than reading a statistic on the side of a bus that transpires to be completely made up.
Yeah, I think you say they're running out of tricks now, whoever they are. As you say, narcissists they're magicians, but they're not very clever ones.
Nah, they're con artists. A lot of the tricks are cheap. And it can only, the tricks of a narcissist can only work on very impressionable, very emotionally immature people. So people watching my channel, Spartan Life Coach, it's always, every video has a metaphor in it. From day one, it's been the personal is political and the political is personal. Every video's had a metaphor in it, and it's always been about, at the macrocosmic level, the struggle that we have with people who are in a position of authority over us, and to not otherize them. They are us. They're not from another planet. It's still us. Like, narcissists are still human beings, and we all hold the seeds of narcissism in our hearts. So don't panic about what's going on outside. Don't overly focus on blaming people and castigating people out there in the world. Don't get into fights online. Work on yourself. Just become more emotionally mature, more balanced. Drink a cup of coffee, put a nice clean pair of socks on, go for a walk and smell the fresh air.
Yeah, put some other clothes on as well, because
don't listen to him.
No.
Don't listen to him. Naked socks, coffee.
Naked socks, warm feet, warm heart, cold penis.
That's the title of my next course, is Naked Socks.
Yeah, naked.
Not the Wim Hof method, the Richie sock method. It would be.
Warm heat, warm feet, cold heart, small penis with Richard Grannon. Done. Who needs marketing gurus,
That's it. Like, what do I owe you for that? I mean, that's beautiful.
You can have that one.
I can't even remember that. Warm feet, small cocks, big socks.
I do. To be honest, I don't know. It just comes out. Well, cheers, Richard. I will stop recording now.
Right, buddy.
And thanks for that. Cheers.